different aspects of this war, which are contained in my book.
Istraživao sam sve aspekte ovog rata i oni se nalaze u mojoj knjizi.
But since my arrival here, I have discovered certain things which are very significant.
Ali od kada sam došao ovde, saznao sam još neke jako bitne stvari.
Milosevic, I was called to be witness in the Milosevic trial.
Bio sam pozvan kao svedok na Miloševićevo suđenje.
And I wrote a letter to the court
Napisao sam pismo sudu
that in view of their decision to remove Milosevic's right to self-defense, I would not be appearing as a witness because what they did was illegal and criminal.
Tako govorio sam sudu da ne želim da učestvujem u tome zbog toga što su mu oduzeli pravo na odbranu, što je bio kriminalan čin.
There were two lawyers who were identified as counsel to President Milosevic.
Bilo su dodeljena dvojica advokata.
There were two lawyers, they were not chosen by him, they were chosen by the court.
Oni nisu izabrali, Milošević ih nije izabrao kod sudu.
And that was an illegal act.
To je bio ilegalan čin.
What I've discovered more recently going into the documents, and this is fundamental because we are living the aftermath of that war.
Saznao sam još neke stvari o dokumentaciji i ovo je jako bitno jer živimo u vremenu nakon toga.
At the same time, we must understand that this was the first NATO war.
Moramo također razumjeti da je ovo bio prvi zvanični rat.
And I consulted one of the first statements that Milosevic presented at the court of The Hague was on December 11, 2001.
Jedna od prvih Miloševićevih izjava je bila u decembru 2001.
And that was only 2 months after the invasion of Afghanistan, which were based on lies and fabrications to the effect that Al-Qaeda had attacked America on September 11, 2001.
Te izjave su se ticale američkog napada na Afganistan, koji je bio zasnovan na lažima da je Al-Qaeda napala Sjedinjene Američke Države 11. septembra 2001.
It just so happens that Milosevic was fully informed in our discussions. He had read my book on Al-Qaeda, and he said, well, Al-Qaeda is linked up to KLA.
Milošević je razumeo sve pojedinosti tog rata i neke od njih saznao iz moje knjige, kao pa govorio i u vezama Al-Qaide i UČK.
But what is most significant is that he was being accused of focusing on an entity which, according to Western media, were described as freedom fighters.
On je bio optužen da se borio protiv organizacije koje su zapadni mediji prikazali kao organizacije koje se bore za slobodu.
When in fact, Hashim Tashi and most of his colleagues had a file in Interpol.
A činjenica je da je Hashim Tashi kao i njegovi saradnici da su svi imali dosije u Interpolu.
And it was only 20 years later that they sent Hashim Tashi to The Hague for crimes he committed in the 1990s.
I tek 20 godina kasnije su Hashima Tashija poslali u Haag za zločine je počinio 1990.
Quite frankly, that act should not have been allowed by the Serbian authorities.
Taj čin nije trebao da bude dozvoljen od strane srpskih vlasti.
You are sending a criminal, a paid killer. He's not even, and of course, he became prime minister and president, and then after that they said we don't need him anymore, and they will now have a long-standing trial. My suggestion, and that's fundamental, he is a citizen of Serbia, a bad guy, but he should be tried here in Belgrade for the crimes that he has committed 20 years ago, more than 20 years ago.
Kažem tači kriminalac koji je postavljen kao premijer Kosova, takozvanog Kosova, i on je samo poslužio svoj svrski, kasnije je poslat u Hag, a čini se da bi trebalo da mu se sudi ovdje u Beogradu za zločine koje je počinio na Kosovu.
Now I come back to the issue of the trial against Milosevic. In his first statement to the court on December 11, 2001, he confronted the prosecutors and said, and of course negated what they were saying.
Da se vratimo na suđenje Miloševiću, on je 11. decembra 2001. godine se suprotstavio sudu i odbacio tužbu.
What happened? They cut the microphone. He has the right to self-defense, but he has also the right to witness, and they cut the microphone when he said bad things against the prosecutor.
Oduzeli su mu pravo na odbranu, kao i to govori o optužnici koja je bila lažna.
Now the right to express himself, the right to talk, is taken away from him in December 2001. He has the right of self-defense, but when the procedures start up again, what do? They invoke amicus curiae, which enables the court to assign lawyers acting on behalf of the accused.
Pored toga što su mu oduzeli pravo na odbranu, dodelili su takozvane prijatelje suda da oni sprovode tu odbranu, iako je on imao pravo.
And as I mentioned earlier, I was a witness for Milosevic, and I looked into the issue. These were two lawyers from the United Kingdom that were selected without consulting Milosevic, and they were amicus, well, they were initially defined as amicus curiae, but then they were called the court's counselors.
Dodeljene su mu dva engleska, odnosno britanska advokata, koji su bili saradnici suda, iako je to bilo pravno nelegalno.
And what was the justification for denying Milosevic the right to self-defense, which is a principle it's a legal principle in common law and in all jurisdictions?
I šta je bilo iskorišteno kao izgovor za odbijanje da mu se dozvoli samoodbrana?
And this I didn't know until I started going carefully through a lot of documents. They said Milosevic has a health problem.
Ja nisam ovo znao da nisam istražio dokumentaciju. Rekli su da Milošević ima zdravstvene probleme. To ne može da sprovodi samoodbranu.
And his health has deteriorated. Now the reason why his health has deteriorated is because the court denied him medical attention.
A razlog zašto je zdravstveno stanje se pogoršalo je to što je sud odbio da mu pruži zdravstvenu zaštitu.
And what was involved there is that he, first of all, was denied the right to his defense because he had health problem, and the court wants to come to his rescue by hiring these two British lawyers.
Ovo je iskorišteno kao izgovor da mu se oduzme pravo na samoodbranu i dodeljeni su ova dvojica engleskih britanskih advokata.
What did I do? I sent a letter to the British Bar Association when I was advised of what was going on, and said I cannot come because you have denied his right to self-defense.
Poslao sam pismo engleskom udruženju pravnika i rekao da ne želim da učestvujem u svemu ovome zbog toga što mu je oduzето pravo na samoodbranu.
But in many regards, those two lawyers I have this on record. Those two lawyers are also in derogation of British law.
Sami advokati su kršili britansko pravo.
Now, of course, that was only the beginning. The denial of his right to self-defense, the appointment of two lawyers by the court and not by him, and then to act on his behalf. And then the next stage was, of course, the assassination of Milosevic. And
Sljedeća faza je bilo njegovo ubistvo nakon što su mu onemogućili odbranu i dodelili advokate koji su bili saradnici.
last week we commemorated here in Belgrade his passing.
Prošle nedelje smo obeležili godišnjicu njegove smrti.
And I quoted an important document which was written 3 days. It was written, I believe, on the 8th of March. And he had sent a letter to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Russian Federation requesting that they come to his help in terms of his health. But he also understood that he was being poisoned. That is in the letter. And the letter, of course, is on fire. In other words, Milosevic was killed under the auspices of the court at The Hague. They knew it and they ordered it.
Drugim rečima, Milošević je ubijen od nadzornog suda, oni su to znali i to su oni naredili.
The issue, I think, certainly is the legacy of Milosevic.
Nasljeđe, pravi problem za sud je svakako bilo nasljeđe.
Which I understood when I was at the court with him.
Što sam razumeo kada sam proveo vreme sa njim.
We developed a friendship, and his legacy is also the legacy of all the victims.
Ostali smo prijatelji i želim da istaknem da je njegova nasljeđe svih žrtava.
Throughout Yugoslavia, victims, people who were being killed. We have documented all the crimes. I've documented some of them in my book. They're economic crimes of unprecedented proportions. When the World Bank comes in the late 80s, it says 600,000 people lose their jobs in the industrial sector, which was destroyed by the World Bank, who were complicit.
Dokumentovali smo sve zločine naroda Jugoslavije, a posebno ekonomski rat koji se provođen 1980. godina nakon Svetske banke koje se pokrenulo da preko 600.000 ljudi izgubi posao u proizvodnoj ekonomiji.
Milosevic could have acted otherwise, but he decided on the truth, and he decided to act, to give his life to the people of Serbia.
Milošević je mogao da izabere vaš put, ali je izabrao teži i dao svoj život za nas.
Now let me just say a few words about the future.